Hello and welcome to Mabinda TV. So for now, this is Good News Africa. I'm looking at the presidential ticket formations that is between Kalonzo Matiang'i, Kalonzo Gachagua, Kalonzo Sifuna. Whom do you think will carry the day? Of course, we are assuming that the presidential candidate of the United Opposition will be Kalonzo Musyoka. That's our assumption. That is the candidate of the opposition will be Kalonzo Musyoka. So, which presidential formation will carry the day? So, you have Kalonzo Sifuna ticket. I think it is formidable because I think Sifuna is the leader of the Gen Zs. If you ask me, the Gen Zs, of course, say they are leaderless, but I don't think so. I think now they have a leader. So basically, the Gen Zs, I think now have a leader that is. I think the Gen Zs have a leader that is Edin Sifuna, and I think the Linda Monanchi camp, according to a poll by TIFA, that is the Trends and Insights for Africa. TIFA poll shows that the Linda Mwananchi is supported by 74% of ODM supporters, while the Linda ground of Oburu Odinga is only supported by 26% of the respondents. So basically, you have the Linda you have the Linda Mwananchi being supported by more ODM supporters. So basically, Kalonzo Sifuna ticket, I think, is very formidable. I think Sifuna should maintain the momentum that he has carried himself. That is, Edwin Sifuna. If he maintains that momentum, then I think Edwin Sifuna will be the leader of the Gen Zs. Of course, on one or two things you might not agree with him, but you can't be sure that Edwin Sifuna is ticking on all the right boxes. Of course, he is hammering home, taking aim at President Ruto. Of course, he has said that ODM, he will not be in an ODM where they support the NMCs, that is William Ruto for the top seat. So that is the Kalonzo Sifuna ticket for you. Then, of course, another ticket we could be looking at is Kalonzo Matiang'i ticket. So of course, Matiang'i was a favored presidential candidate of the Jubilee Party. That is Fred Matiang'i. Of course, he has been fronted by former President Uhuru Kenyatta. So basically, you have the former President Uhuru Kenyatta seconding Matiang'i to be the presidential candidate. But I think you would have given it to Matiang'i. Matiang'i was the de facto prime minister during Uhuru's regime. He was, in fact, the prime minister. So basically, he was coordinating the government activities. Of course, sometimes Uhuru was not doing much work and leaving Matiang'i to do everything. So basically, Matiang'i is that crisis mode of a leader. I think that is how you could describe Matiang'i. He was a crisis mode of a leader, where if a leader performed basically, then that was the same crisis mode of a leader as the late Tanzanian president John Pombe Magufuli. So basically, you have a Kalonzo Musyoka Matiang'i ticket. It will be a one of performance, and I think that is the way we could have a ticket that is formidable. But of course, then the other ticket is Kalonzo Gachagua ticket. I'm still not sure whether the impeachment allows Gachagua to run as a presidential candidate or as a running mate to a presidential candidate. But I think you cannot count out the Mount Kenya vote. Kenyan politics is ethnic driven. So basically, if your man is not on the top of the ticket, then basically you don't give support to the opposition candidate. Of course, the opposition is looking for a win such as the one of 2002. Of course, in that win, the opposition coalesced all of them around President Mwai Kibaki when the late Right Honorable Prime Minister Raila Odinga said that Kibaki Tosha. That was the moment then for the opposition came together and they rallied behind Kibaki, beating Kanu's candidate Uhuru Kenyatta by 67% of the vote. So I think for now then what we need to do, Kalonzo Gachagua ticket will rally the Mount Kenya base. Of course, Gachagua has taken up about 50% of the Mount Kenya vote. And of course, for William Ruto, remember, he was elected basically based on the Mount Kenya votes. You cannot deny that fact. He got more votes from Mount Kenya than he got from his own backyard of Rift Valley. Of course, Ruto went in with a whole carrot that is a Yangu Kumi, ya Uhuru Kumi, ya Ruto Kumi. So, of course, he is saying the debt has not yet been paid in full. That is what President William Ruto is saying, that the debt has not yet been paid in full. So basically, you have President William Ruto still hoping to hang on to the Mount Kenya voting bloc, and I think that is how we will see how it will turn out, and I think that is the way we could usher in. So you have a three-way ticket: Kalonzo Sifuna ticket, Kalonzo Matiang'i ticket, Kalonzo Gachagua ticket. So that's assuming Kalonzo Musyoka will be the running mate of President William Ruto. So, of course, Kenyan politics is driven by ethnic kingpins. Of course, I would wish that we would have an ideological driven politics, one where we vote based on issues and ideology, not one where we vote based just on tribal alone. But that's not the case. We vote based on a tribal leaning. So basically, if your man is not at the top of the ticket, then basically, and not the running mate to the top of the ticket, then basically you say, I will not vote for this person. But I think that needs to change. I think that is something that we should be changing about our politics. We need politics based on issues, politics that basically is about issues, and I think that is the way we could grow this country. So basically, that is and that is hoping Kalonzo Musyoka will be the opposition flag bearer. I think opposition knows if they don't unite, then they have no snowball's chance in head of unseating President William Ruto. As they look for President William Ruto to be the first one-term president, then of course the issue we must ask is can he deliver the seat? Can Kalonzo Musyoka deliver the presidency? Of course, he has been the running mate to Raila Odinga 3 times, and of course, for then that calls that he is now mature enough to be the presidential flag bearer of the opposition. So that's it about the ticket of Kalonzo Musyoka Sifuna, Kalonzo Musyoka Matiang'i, Kalonzo Musyoka Gachagua. So basically, I think Gashagua's DCP is growing in leaps and bounds. Gashagua's DCP, I think, is growing in leaps and bounds, and that is something that we need to take cognizance of. Kalonzo's party, Gashagua's party, DCP, is growing, and of course, he has not won a major by-election, but the margin is shrinking. Look at the Murua Dikir by-election, in which DCP candidate got 10,000 votes against UDS David Keter, who got 18,000 votes to his 10,000 votes. So DCP will be a formidable party, especially in Mount Kenya. But I think then Gachagua will have a huge say on who will be the presidential flag bearer. Of course, I think Gachagua favors Kalonzo, and of course, that is why he keeps on saying, hey, cousin. Of course, Gachagua keeps on saying, hey, cousin, referring to his Kamba brethren. Of course, he says Gema should be revived, and I think that is something. It's a way to show. That's the way that this voting will be decided. So, who do you think will win a Kenyan presidency? Who do you think will win the Kenyan presidency? Is it President William Ruto or a united opposition led by Kalonzo Musyoka? Who do you think will win the presidency? Of course, President William Ruto must move from campaigner in chief to commander in chief. President Ruto is promising roads, infrastructure. He is promising that he will build the Thika highway. But of course, President Ruto always over promises but delivers very little, and that is why then he says he will show the opposition does. But really, this is the time to be fulfilling your election mandate. The bottoms up economic model was about lifting the mama mboga, the border guy from uh, their fate in life. The mama mboga, the border guy, they have not had look at the fuel price. The fuel price has increased. Petrol is now 214. Diesel is now 242. So you can per liter. So you can't be sure that the mama mboga guy will be looking to exacerbate. And I think that is the way that we need to go. I think President Ruto, the fuel prices are going to do him in, and I think the government must really cushion Kenyans. The government must cushion Kenyans against the heavy. Of course, they will say it is the war in the Middle East between Iran versus America and Israel on the other hand. But of course, why not zero rate fuel altogether, as the flamboyant and Ndindi Nyoro says, that is, remove the VAT on fuel and, of course, use a substantial chunk of the fuel levy to be able to cushion Kenyans against the high because you can't be sure when fuel rises, almost everything else also rises. When fuel rises, almost everything else also rises, and that is why I think then we need to be cognizant of fuel rise, and I think that is the way that we can't cushion the hustlers, we can't cushion the mama mboga, we can't cushion the border guy. You can't be sure. Fuel is used in transport, in manufacturing, in almost everything. And if this fuel does not come down, then basically Kenyans will have a very high cost of living, and that will hamper the economic growth. So what use are roads if we cannot put food on the table? So I think what President Ruto must do is now to put more food on the table for Kenyans. That is the way that we will be able to have a country that really functions. So those are the formations: Kalonzo Sifuna ticket, Kalonzo Matiang'i ticket, Kalonzo Gachagua ticket, and of course maybe there could be a compromise. You have the Star Opinion writer, Wycliffe Muga, saying maybe the opposition could compromise on a candidate such as David Maraga. I'm not sure of that proposition, whether it could win elections, but of course, I'm sure when the time comes, the opposition will lock themselves in a room and decide, yes, our goal is to take power. Our goal is to take power, and which better candidate to do that? The better candidate to do that, we will all support him so that then this country can turn over a new leaf. This country can head over to be a country we are really punching below our weight, and we need to fix the leadership of this country, and that is the way that we can change this country. So bye for now till the next time. This is Good News Africa.